My stepkids told me to shut up because I'm nobody in their house. So I removed myself along with the roof, the money, and the paid perks. They realized too late what they'd lost. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. I'm Michael, 43 years old. My trade is home renovation and furniture repair. I take pride in bringing ruined things back to life. A broken chair, a cracked table, a door hanging loose on its hinges. Most men would call them junk. I see something different. Wood that still remembers its shape, a frame that only needs the right hands to stand straight again. For years, that was my purpose. I fixed what others gave up on. And somewhere along the way, I started believing that gift applied to more than just houses and furniture. I thought maybe I could fix people. Maybe I could fix families. I was wrong. The cruelest betrayals don't come from strangers. They don't come from competitors or enemies. They come from the ones you carry on your shoulders, the ones you bleed for, the ones you starve yourself for just so they can eat. They look you dead in the eye and remind you that you are replaceable, disposable, nothing. I learned that lesson the hardest way a man can. 4 years ago, I met Emily. She was 36 at the time, working in accounting for a small firm downtown. She had the kind of smile that could make a man believe he had found a safe harbor at last. Gentle, disarming, but edged with the confidence of someone who knew how to survive. Her laugh wasn't the kind that filled a room with noise. It was quieter, mate, like it belonged only to the one who earned it. And for a time I thought I had earned it. But Emily didn't come alone. She had 2 children, Josh, 14, already taller than his mother, with the careless defiance of a boy who thinks the world owes him something, and Kate, 11, quieter than her brother but sharp-tongued when she wanted to be. From the very beginning, Emily was clear. They're a package deal. I didn't flinch. I told her I understood. Truth is, I thought I was ready. I had no children of my own, no family of blood that depended on me. In her, I saw the life I had been waiting for. A ready-made home, laughter echoing through hallways, dinners with more than one plate set at the table. I told myself that love wasn't about starting from scratch. Sometimes love was stepping into a story already written and fighting to write a better ending. So I said yes. We moved in together after a year of dating. The house was nothing special, but we made it ours. I rebuilt the porch with my own hands, sanded the floors, painted the kitchen a pale blue Emily loved. She told me she'd never seen anyone work like I did, pouring myself into wood and nails as if every beam were a promise. I thought her admiration meant we were building something real. What I didn't know was that the foundation was already cracked. Tom, their biological father, had made sure of it long before I ever set foot in their lives. Tom was the ghost at every dinner table, even when he wasn't there. He was the fun dad, the one who swooped in on weekends with expensive toys and wild promises, only to vanish again by Sunday night. Where I saw discipline and responsibility, he saw an opportunity to undermine. If I said bedtime was 10, Tom told them bedtime didn't matter. If I told them to finish homework before video games, Tom laughed and said school wasn't everything. If I tried to teach them respect, Tom whispered that they didn't have to listen to me, because I wasn't their real father. And so, before I had even unpacked my tools in that house, he had already poisoned the well. At first, the signs were small. Josh would roll his eyes when I asked him to take out the trash. Kate would disappear into her room when I asked her to set the table. Nothing unusual, I told myself, just kids being kids, adjusting to a new man in their mother's life. I tried patience. I tried kindness. I thought if I just kept showing up, if I just kept providing, eventually they'd see me as more than the stranger who had replaced the man they still called Dad. But betrayal doesn't come like a storm. It seeps in like water, slow, silent, until one day you realize the floorboards are rotten beneath your feet. I remember the first cut that drew blood. It was only a few months after I moved in. Emily and I were sitting at the table, bills spread between us, trying to stretch her paycheck and mine into enough for groceries, utilities, and the kids' endless needs. Josh walked in, phone in hand, and asked if I could give him money for a new pair of sneakers. I told him we couldn't afford them that month, but maybe next time. He didn't argue. He didn't even look at me. He just shrugged and said, "Dad would have bought them," before walking out of the room. Emily froze. She didn't defend me, didn't correct him. She just sat there in silence, eyes down, as if the words hadn't cut through me like a blade. That was the moment I realized what I had walked into. I wasn't a stepfather. I was an intruder in their story, a stand-in they tolerated until the man who abandoned them decided to reappear. Still, I stayed, because I loved Emily, because I wanted to believe that time and effort could change hearts, because I thought if I kept fixing what was broken, eventually they'd see me not as the outsider, but as the man who had been there all along. But even as I tried to build, Tom was tearing down. The kids would come back from weekends with him full of contempt, armed with new insults, subtle and sharp. When I told Josh to mow the lawn, he said, "Why? You're not the boss of me." When I asked Kate to clean up after dinner, she muttered under her breath, "You're not even family." Each word was a crack in the frame I was trying to hold together. Each silence from Emily was another nail driven into the coffin of respect. Looking back now, I see the truth. The betrayal had already begun *N before I even arrived. Tom had planted it in them like a seed, and Emily had watered it with her silence. All I did was step into a garden that was never meant to grow anything but thorns. Tom was the kind of man who had no business calling himself a father, yet somehow he wore the title like a badge. To the world, he was a charming drifter, always smiling, always spinning stories, always the center of attention at whatever party or bar he happened to stumble into. To his children, he was a hero, not because he earned it, not because he gave them stability, but because he never demanded anything of them. He was the fun dad. When he picked them up for weekends, it was always a spectacle. He'd pull into our driveway blasting music from his beat-up truck, the kind of music that rattled the windows. Josh and Kate would come running, their bags half-zipped, faces glowing with excitement as though they were escaping a prison. He'd load them in, toss me a smug grin, and speed away. They'd return 2 days later with fast food bags, cheap toys, and stories of water parks, arcades, late-night movies, and zero rules. I tried not to compare. I told myself children needed both sides, fun and structure, that it wasn't about competition. But it became harder to believe that when Tom's version of fatherhood was actively built on tearing me down. He didn't just spoil them. He *P***nized them. I heard it in their voices when they came home. Josh would say things like, "Dad says you don't know how to have fun," when I asked him to do his homework. Kate would repeat, "Dad says you can't tell us what to do," when I asked her to help with chores. It wasn't just resistance. It was indoctrination. Tom was poisoning them against me, brick by brick, word by word. And Emily? She stood in the middle, too afraid to confront him, too eager to keep the peace. She'd say things like, "They're just kids, Michael. They don't mean it." Or, "You know how Tom is. Don't take it so seriously." But it was serious. Every small cut bleeds if you let it. At first, it was little rebellions, rolled eyes, doors slammed, conversations that ended with silence instead of acknowledgement. I thought it was temporary, a storm I could weather. I reminded myself that respect is earned, that maybe in time they'd see the difference between the man who showed up every day and the man who disappeared when it was inconvenient. But patience is a dangerous thing when it turns into denial. The turning point came with Josh. He was growing into his teenage arrogance, testing boundaries, measuring himself against every authority figure he could find. I tried to give him responsibility, thinking it would give him pride. I asked him to mow the lawn, to fix the fence with me, to learn the small tasks that make a house run. One afternoon, I caught him sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, the yard untouched. When I reminded him, he didn't even look up. "Why don't you do it?" he muttered. "It's your house." Something in me bristled. "It's our house, Josh. We all live here. We all take care of it." That's when he looked at me, really looked at me with a smirk I'll never forget. "Dad says you're not the boss of me. And he's right. You're not my dad." The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily was in the kitchen, her back to us. She froze but said nothing. Not a correction. Not a word of defense. Just silence, heavy and sharp, as if she believed it too. Kate wasn't much better. She had mastered the art of absence. Whenever I asked for her help, she vanished. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she slipped away with some excuse. But when she did speak, her words were laced with venom she shouldn't have known at 11. One night, when I asked her to set the table, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Why? Mom only keeps you around for the money." She said it like a fact. Not even cruel, just casual, as though it were common knowledge. I turned toward Emily, waiting for her to correct it, to defend me, to say that's not true. But she only lowered her head, busying herself with stirring a pot that didn't need stirring. Her silence was worse than the insult. It told me she knew what Kate said was true in their eyes. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, those words echoing, "Not your dad, only money," over and over, until they became a drumbeat of contempt. It built slowly like pressure in a pipe. Every day a little more. The climax came on a Friday night. I came home from work late, exhausted, to find our house full of noise. Music blasted from upstairs. The thud of footsteps shook the floor, and laughter spilled down the staircase. At first, I thought Emily had invited family over. But when I walked into the living room, I realized what it was. Josh had thrown a party. Teenagers crowded the house. Kids I'd never seen before, drinking sodas, eating food from our kitchen, feet on the furniture I had built with my own hands. Empty chip bags, soda cans, and crumbs littered the floor. My chest tightened. This wasn't a home. It was a playground I hadn't agreed to. I found Josh in the middle of it, surrounded by his friends like a king holding court. I told him, firmly but calmly, to shut the party down and clean up. He looked me dead in the eye, smirked, and said loudly so everyone could hear, "Shut up. You're nobody here." The laughter that followed was worse than any punch. The kids looked at me not with fear, not with respect, but with amusement, as if I were a clown who had wandered onto their stage. And then Kate appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She added her piece to the chorus. "Yeah, Mom only keeps you around for the money." The crowd roared with laughter again. My own home turned into an arena where I was the fool. Emily was nowhere to be seen. I felt something inside me harden that night. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anyone out. I just stood there, absorbing the contempt, memorizing every smirk, every dismissive glance. I realized then that this wasn't just a phase. This wasn't immaturity. This was a pattern, one I had allowed to grow by believing patience alone could fix it. And in that moment, I understood the truth. Respect wasn't coming. Not from Josh, not from Kate, not even from Emily, who had stood silent too many times to claim innocence. I was the provider, the handyman, the ATM, the man who fixed everything except the one thing that mattered, their view of me. That night, for the first time, I considered what it would mean to stop fixing, to stop providing, to stop being their foundation. And the thought didn't scare me. It gave me peace. After that party, something in me changed. It wasn't rage, not exactly. Rage burns hot and fast, and I didn't want to give them that. No, what I felt was colder, like ice moving through my veins, freezing every illusion I'd been clinging to. For years, I had believed that patience would be enough. That sacrifice would earn me recognition. That love, or something close to it, could be built if I just kept showing up. But in that moment, surrounded by laughter that treated me as nothing more than a walking wallet in my own home, I understood the truth. They didn't see me, not as a father, not as a man, not even as a person who deserved basic respect. I was just the roof over their heads. And a roof doesn't speak. It doesn't discipline. It doesn't ask for gratitude. It only shelters until it collapses from neglect. That night, after the last of the party noise died down, I walked into the kitchen. Empty bottles and greasy wrappers covered the counters. Someone had spilled soda on the floor. The couch cushions were stained with something I didn't even want to identify. And there was Josh, slumped in a chair, pretending to be asleep, his phone still glowing in his hand. Kate had retreated to her room, door locked. Emily was upstairs in our bedroom, silent as always. I stood in that wreckage and realized the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Felt like Tom's shadow lived here, stronger than I ever was. So I made a decision. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anyone out that night. Instead, I sat at the dining table, pulled out a box of receipts, and began stacking them in neat piles. Mortgage payments, utility bills, groceries, school supplies, sports fees, birthdays. Every cent I had poured into this family, recorded in black ink, laid bare under the yellow light of a kitchen lamp. The numbers were staggering, years of sacrifice staring back at me in cold, unfeeling digits. When the piles were tall enough to block my view across the table, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't love. This was servitude. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent. I carried cardboard boxes into Josh's room first. His sneakers, his hoodies, his video games, his phone charger. All packed neatly, without malice, without ceremony. Then Kate's room. Clothes folded, books stacked, stuffed animals tossed in last. I didn't break anything. I didn't throw their lives into trash bags. I packed them as carefully as I would a client's furniture, because they were no longer mine to care for. By 7, the boxes filled the back of my truck. I drove them across town to Tom's apartment. The place reeked of stale beer and fried food, the hallway lined with peeling wallpaper. He opened the door in a wrinkled t-shirt, hair unwashed, eyes *T. When he saw me standing there with boxes stacked in my arms, he smirked like it was some kind of joke. "What's this?" he asked. "Congratulations." I told him, my voice flat. "You're the full-time parent now." I didn't wait for a response. I carried the boxes inside, one by one, setting them down on his filthy kitchen floor. Empty bottles clinked as I stepped around them. Josh's PlayStation ended up next to a pile of dirty dishes. Kate's schoolbooks sat on a counter sticky with old spills. I placed them there without care, because this was where they belonged. Tom laughed, trying to mask the unease in his eyes. "What, you giving up?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No, I'm done pretending." And then I walked out. When I got back home, I changed the locks. I set their house keys on the counter, waiting for Emily to notice. And for the first time in years, I lay down in bed and slept, really slept, without the weight of their contempt pressing on my chest. The fallout came fast. By the second day, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Emily first, her voice breaking over voicemail after voicemail. "Michael, please, they're just kids. You overreacted. We can talk about this. Please, don't do this." Then Josh. His messages weren't please. They were curses. "You can't do this. You're pathetic. I never wanted you here anyway." The words were venomous, but I could hear the panic underneath. Kate's messages were softer. Short texts like, "Can I come home?" and "Dad doesn't buy food." But I didn't reply. And then Tom himself called. His voice was slurred with anger. "What the hell am I supposed to do with them? I can't afford this." I almost laughed. "Not my problem," I told him. "They're yours. They always were." He sputtered, tried to argue, but I hung up before he could finish. By the end of the week, Emily showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. She didn't knock at first. She just stood there until I opened the door. "You can't do this," she whispered. "You can't just abandon them." "Abandon them?" I repeated, my voice low but sharp. "Emily, I fed them. I clothed them. I paid for everything they ever wanted. And when they looked me in the eye, they told me I was nothing. That you only kept me around for money. And you," I pointed at her chest, "you stood there and said nothing. You let them spit on me. Don't talk to me about abandonment. I'm the only one who showed up." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue, because she knew it was true. She begged me to let them come back. Said Tom wasn't capable. Said the kids needed stability. But I stayed firm. "Stability without respect is slavery," I told her. "If I walk back into that role without change, nothing will ever change. You know it. I know it." For the first time, she didn't have an answer. She just cried, and I let her. Meanwhile, Josh's bravado began to crack. He called again, but this time his voice wasn't angry. It was tired, shaky. "There's no food here," he admitted. "Dad sleeps all day. He doesn't care." Kate, too, started leaving longer messages. "I'm sorry," she whispered in one. "I didn't mean it. I was just mad." But apologies after the damage mean little. They weren't speaking from respect. They were speaking from hunger, from chaos, from the collapse of the illusion that Tom was ever a real father. And through it all, I held my ground. For once in my life, I wasn't fixing what they broke. I wasn't pouring myself into thankless mouths. I wasn't holding up a roof for people who spat on me from underneath it. I was free. A week passed. A week of silence, of empty rooms, of meals eaten alone in the house I had rebuilt with my hands. Some men fear silence. For me, it was a revelation. No slamming doors. No sneers at the dinner table. No invisible line that reminded me I was tolerated but never accepted. Just quiet. Just me. But silence doesn't last. On the 8th day, I woke to the sound of knocking. Slow at first, then desperate, pounding against the doorframe like the world was collapsing outside. I didn't rush. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and drank it, savoring the bitter taste, while the knocking continued. Finally, I opened the door. They were all there, Emily, Josh, and Kate. The sight of them on my porch looked almost staged, like a portrait of regret. Emily's eyes were swollen from crying, her shoulders hunched. Josh stood stiff, hands shoved into his pockets, his jaw clenched like he'd rather be anywhere else. Kate was already crying, cheeks wet, her small frame trembling under the weight of something heavier than her age. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Josh, the boy who once smirked in my face and declared I was nobody, cleared his throat. His voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual arrogance. I'm sorry," he muttered. The words dragged out of him like chains. "You really did take care of us. Dad doesn't. He won't." Kate sobbed harder at that, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean what I said. The money thing. I was just angry. I didn't—" Her words dissolved into tears. And then Emily. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Michael, I was wrong. I thought keeping quiet would keep the peace. I thought they'd figure it out on their own. But I betrayed you with my silence." The porch felt heavy, the autumn air pressing down around us. I looked at them, at their faces streaked with the fallout of their choices, and felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. They had learned what life without me meant. They had tasted the emptiness of Tom's promises. But words are cheap. Regret comes easy when the bills pile up. So I didn't open the door fully. I didn't step aside. I let them stand there and squirm. "Do you know what it felt like?" I asked slowly. "To work my hands raw, to pay every bill, to give you everything I had, only to hear you laugh and say I was nothing? Do you know what that does to a man?" Josh stared at the porch floorboards. Kate buried her face in Emily's coat. Emily wiped her cheeks but didn't try to interrupt. "I'll tell you," I continued. "Ik*LS something inside. Turns love into duty, and duty into chains. And when chains snap, they don't go back together." Silence. Only the sound of Kate's muffled crying. Finally, Emily spoke. "Michael, please, let us come home. We'll do better. I'll do better. Just don't shut us out forever." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "If I let you back in, it will not be the same. This house will not be the same. There will be rules, boundaries, consequences. And the moment, I hear words like before, the moment respect is gone, so am I. Do you understand me?" Josh lifted his head, eyes red but steady. "Yeah," he said. "I get it." His voice cracked, but it was honest. Kate sniffled. "I promise. I'll try. I'll do better." And Emily, she nodded slowly, as if the weight of her failure finally sat fully on her shoulders. "I'll back you up this time. No more silence." For a long moment, I let them stand there. I wanted them to feel the distance between us, the weight of the threshold they were begging to cross. Then, finally, I stepped aside. "Then you get one chance. Only one. Don't waste it." They filed in quietly. No laughter. No defiance. Just the hushed footsteps of people who understood the cost of their betrayal. The first days were awkward. Josh avoided eye contact, his usual cockiness replaced by silence. Kate lingered near me like a shadow, as if afraid I'd vanish again. Emily busied herself cleaning, cooking, anything to prove she was trying. I didn't make it easy. I didn't smile. I didn't soften. Respect had to be earned now, not assumed. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. One evening, I found Josh in the garage, watching me repair a broken chair. He didn't say much at first, just hovered. Then he asked if he could help. His hands were clumsy, but he tried. For the first time, I saw humility in his eyes. Kate started doing her homework at the dining table without being told. Sometimes she'd leave little notes beside my coffee mug. Scribbled apologies, small thank yous, words she couldn't say out loud yet. One morning, I found one that read, "Thank you for not giving up on us even when we were awful." I kept it folded in my wallet. And Emily, she finally sought therapy. Not for the kids, not for me, but for herself. She admitted she had been afraid to be the bad mom. So she let me carry the weight alone. Now she was trying to change that. For the first time, she looked at me not as a man to absorb the blows, but as a partner she had failed. A month later, the house felt different. Josh was mowing the lawn without being asked. Kate was setting the table before dinner. Emily's laughter sounded less like a mask and more like something real. But I never let myself forget. Respect is fragile. Once broken, it never returns the same. What we had now wasn't innocence. It was something sharper, something born of consequences. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we all needed.